Hey friends, Mr. Warden here, back in the workshop. It is a beautiful evening here in this neighborhood. I'd like to show you something. As many of you know, who've been following me for some amount of time, I am currently in the middle of restoring a 1991 Chevrolet G20 van that ideally I will turn into a little house and drive around the country, saying hi to all of my fans and subscribers, and well, we'll see what happens, right? As part of that restoration, I had to completely take apart and rebuild the passenger door, and I'll put some pictures in here. This is the power lock motor that allows the door to be locked remotely, or rather indirectly, with the little switch that's in your door. How does that work? Well, I'll put a picture in here of the entire lock mechanism. And personally, I think this is a little bit over-engineered, but this is the way it came from the factory, and so that's what we're going to talk about. This is a power lock linear actuator. A linear actuator is a kind of motor mechanism that translates the spinning action of a motor, refer back to our first episode about motors and electricity, into a linear action, a straight line. So when the battery is connected to these wires and we flip the switch, this motor turns, and what happens when the motor turns is that this actuates a motor, this turns a gear mechanism that allows a post with gear teeth in it to move back and forth, and that allows this hook, this little hole, to move in and out. Now, what that does, you can see here on the picture, as the linear actuator moves in, it pulls on this rod, it pulls on this post. That post is connected to a latch mechanism that closes the latch on the lock mechanism. Here's a sort of facsimile of that post. As this pulls in, it pulls on this rod, and that rod pulls on latch, and that latch makes the door openable or not openable. Something that I thought was neat. Furthermore, I've had to completely replace the power windows motor, the power windows assembly, and I'll show you that in the next clip. Now, somewhat similarly, in terms of, I guess, where they're located on the car, this is the power window assembly. This is a motor that turns a gear, that turns this gear, that raises the relation or changes the relationship between this piece and this piece, which causes this V shape to change its height, and that's what makes your window go up and down. Now, this is the original one out of the van, and this motor was no good. So this is the one that I built out of a high torque motor, and the gear, I took the gear off of here and I put it on here. Now, unfortunately, the way that we went about doing this, there isn't enough torque to drive this gear that drives the cam. There isn't enough torque in this motor to drive this, because the reason that your power window does not suddenly fall when you stop cranking it is that it is under tension. It's under tension from this really heavy-duty tension spring. And the motor has to be high torque enough to turn this gear opposing the amount of tension that's in this massive tension gear, spring gear. That's crazy. This guy just wasn't enough juice. So let me show you what I got. This is a full replacement for the power window assembly. I went ahead and decided to spend the money and buy a full replacement, simply because we've spent too much time on this. When I say me, I mean me and my class have spent too much time trying to fix this. So I went ahead and spent the money and bought a new assembly that should fit in the car. As you can see, everything about it is exactly the same as far as the cam arrangement and the gear arrangement and things like that. This is what connects to the battery that juices up the motor. But yeah, I thought this is a pretty neat piece of engineering, and you know, just something I thought was neat. I thought you might think was neat as well. Don't forget to live the curious life.